An agricultural company inventing a corporate partnership program, getting money from corporate America and bringing it to agriculture in the name of sustainability. I know you've heard about this dream. It's actually happening, and I've got the president of Netafim here in North America to talk to you about it. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of The Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with pattern.ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field, then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. I've got a great one for you today. I know that we've heard these stories now for several years. I remember hearing about Indigo Ag, and I thought, who the hell are these people? And I heard about all these things. Hey, we're going to get money from corporate America. It's going to come to your farm. Well, the reality is it is happening. Look at Truterra. They're one of my sponsors. You hear me talk about them all the time. They're bringing sustainability programs to you. If you sign up for it and you change some of your practices, you can get money on each acre. That money comes from, in some cases, government programs, but more importantly, it comes from some of the private sector. Well, that's what's happening in irrigation. I've got Mike Hemman. He's the president of Netafim North America. If you don't know about Netafim, it's a subsurface drip irrigation company. That's right. Little teeny, they call it tape, but it's like little teeny hoses that go about 12, 14 inches under the ground and irrigate your land. It's more efficient. It's better for the environment than center pivot or flood irrigation because you don't lose all the moisture to evaporation. Well, they decided, you know what? What if we can get some money to help this for our customers and we can get companies to do this? So an entire sustainability plan that's this company's doing, and it's not tree hugging. It's not any of this, protesting plastics. They're actually doing something about it with a recycling program, with bringing monies in and changing the practices. That's what we're covering here today. It's going to be a great one. Mike Hemman, I know I set it up and told you we're going to cover a lot of stuff because we are, but it's all about this one big umbrella. So talk to me.
Yeah. So specifically Netafim, as you know, and likely many of your listeners know, we've been in the drip irrigation business for many, many, many years, over 40, 50 years. And we have reached a point, I think, in many cases where we've penetrated a lot of the specialty crop acres, let's call it that, higher value crops where the return on investment is essentially a no-brainer. The amount of productivity that you get out of drip irrigation or the challenge around water scarcity, it just makes the ROI easy to put the capital up front to invest in a drip irrigation program.
I knew about, I full confession, I didn't even know what subsurface drip irrigation was. I'm an Indiana dairy farm kid. We don't irrigate here because we get 40 inches of precipitation and our soils can hold water generally. In fact, there's a drainage project going on behind me on my very farm right now because our problem usually is getting rid of water. But the Extreme Ag taught me about this. A couple of my Extreme Ag farmers that I've done a number of episodes with them. If you're really bored, don't do it right now. But dear listener, you can go and check out Extreme Ag. Just go over there and talk about subsurface drip irrigation, how they use it on broad acre. But it tends to make more sense on specialty crop, to Mike's point, because almonds have a bigger return on dollars per acre. Grapes have a bigger return on dollars per acre than soybeans. And we're talking by exponential amounts. So you can justify more intensive agriculture on specialty crop. And that's where the bulk of Netafim goes. The problem, and I think you're getting ready to tell me this, you're a California company, at least the North America port is, where we grow more specialty crops is also where water is viewed as a damn near finite resource. They forgot about the hydrologic cycle over there. They think that if you take a gallon of water out of the ground, it's gone forever, which isn't really true. But water is a battleground in the states where a lot of specialty crops are grown. And I think that's where you're going with this. So talk about that and then take me to the initiation of the corporate partnership program.
Yeah, so you're 100% right. There are finite resources, especially in the Western United States, because of lack of precipitation. We also have got some other challenges going on with the sustainability of our surface water and, like anything, the politics that play into how that water is delivered. So now there's challenges around pumping groundwater. We know that we've got challenges with the Colorado River and trying to make sure that we keep the river sustainability and the amount of water that ag takes off of that. So those are places where drip is a no-brainer. It's going to help people to use water more efficiently. To your point, there are also areas where drip can be used literally as a delivery system. You can deliver fertilizer directly through drip irrigation, whether or not you need the irrigation or not. And that's where your folks at Extreme Ag have used a lot of our product. I mean, you talk about a yield booster. Somebody mentioned it's like an IV for the crop. You can put fertilizer whenever, wherever you want, based on the cycle of that particular crop. Now, the corporate partnership program, what's important about this has been many cases, there are crops that don't have those same economics as almonds or lettuce, where drip irrigation would benefit. And I'll use a good example as alfalfa.
Yeah.
The challenge that we have with alfalfa in general, and especially now with the price of alfalfa, is it's pretty tough to do that ROI and put in a full drip irrigation system because of the cost associated with the capital. So what we've been looking to do at Netafim is how do we link farmers up with money? Farmers want money, we want more irrigation installed. The easy way, and the way that's been done, maybe not easy, but the way that's been done historically has been government programs. So we know about EQIP, we know about SWEEP, we know about the Inflation Reduction Act. We also know those are all very oversubscribed programs. And so while we do get some lift from those, probably not as much as we'd like.
Real quickly, the person listening, and I have a lot of farmers, but I have more ag professionals, ag background people that don't farm. If you're curious as to what Mike's saying, I don't know the budgetary numbers, but what I do know, and my brother works for USDA, and I am friendly with the USDA office in Huntington County, Indiana. You can sign up for some of these things, to his point, EQIP, environmental something, it stands for something, of course, and these other, SWEEP, I'm not familiar with that one. But as Mike's saying, yeah, we know the government is generally not frugal, but on the ag conservation programs, it's always got a limit. Certain numbers of acres can be signed up for conservation reserve programs. Certain numbers of dollars and projects can be funded through EQIP, et cetera. So if you say to one of your customers, well, can you get EQIP money or something sweet money through Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Farm Service Agency, what have you, they're probably saying, yeah, I've signed up for that the last 3 years, Mike, and I can't get it. And I think that's what you're saying. They are oversubscribed because there's a certain amount there. Yeah. The sentiment of those programs is actually generally good. Of all the stuff government does, the sentiment of most of those programs is generally protecting our water, windbreak, all that kind of stuff. But there's not enough room.
Correct. And let's not forget that we're currently operating under an expired farm bill as well. So this is a short-term challenge that we're dealing with right now. Yeah. So what we sought to do is say, how else can we bring funding to farmers to help offset this large capital investment that they're going to need to make for drip irrigation? And we set down this path of looking at large companies that have sustainability and ESG programs in place. Many of these programs have stated goals and objectives about water conservation. So people use words like net water neutral or water positive. Many of these companies use an awful lot of water just in whatever the operation is that they do. If it's a tech company, they're probably using water to cool servers, right? And if it's a beverage company, maybe there's some other component of it. But a lot of big corporations use a lot of water. And there's only so much that you can do by installing water efficient sinks, water efficient faucets, no touch things to wash your hand, right? So these companies are really looking for how do they make an impact and how do they offset their water footprint. So what we've done with this program is we are connecting large companies that have these sustainability goals with farmers who are irrigating inefficiently. So some examples that we've done recently in California with companies like Keurig Dr. Pepper and Google is we've connected them with alfalfa farmers in this case who are using flood irrigation.
Yeah.
They've provided funding to those farmers because those farmers happen to operate in the same general vicinity or aquifer or watershed in which these particular companies are operating. They provide funding to the farmer to offset the vast majority of the cost of this capital investment. We automate the irrigation system so we can track how much water is being utilized.
Yep.
Compare that back to a baseline of flood irrigation, and voila, now you can very easily show how much water is being saved by watering more efficiently. We take the acre feet saved, convert it into gallons, and now these companies can go back and say, well, I wasn't able to meet my sustainability messaging with my own use here on my campus, perhaps.
Yep.
I have contributed to getting to a net water neutral or net water positive type of situation.
Yeah. And that I want to get into the motivation for them to do that. Also, what you think the shelf life of that is. I want to go ahead while we're here. I talked about sustainability programs. And again, I talked about Truterra already. I want to remind you that they are a sponsor of the show. They have been now for a couple of years. Truterra is a offshoot, a subsidiary, if you will, of Land O'Lakes, which has been around for more than 100 years. You know, you can trust them. Truterra can help you if you're a farmer and things are a little skinny right now. And I'm talking across the board. Commodities, we're in a tough spot. There's going to be trade challenges. There's going to be a lot of things that make it really farm economics look a little tenuous to me. Just released a podcast about that recently, about the tenuousness, if you will, of the farm economy. And there's a lot of things that resemble 1980 to me. Not trying to scare you, but I want to tell you this. Revenue per acre matters. What if you could get revenue per acre from a program on sustainability that is executed through Truterra? Go to truterraag.com. Maybe you have to do some strip till. You have to do some reduction in tillage. You have to do something on nitrogen reduction. Whatever it is, what's the hell difference does it make? If you're making some money per acre and things are skinny, what if a sustainability program becomes your margin when things are skinny and you're farming at a break-even level? Go to truterraag.com/enroll and check out what program they might have for you. Okay, Mike. This is great. I'm an alfalfa farmer feeding the dairies in California, maybe Idaho, New Mexico. I mean, there's lots of places that are water deprived and have big dairy. Make the question of whether or not there should be so much dairy in those places, since one dairy is a water intensive crop, but that's okay. You're in the business of delivering water, and those farmers are in business of producing alfalfa. It's great. Dr. Pepper says we're going to help reduce water consumption over there on that 1,000 acres of alfalfa. And we're going to then tell everybody, hey, we use a lot of water, but guess what? We saved a whole bunch of water over here. Mm-hmm. 5 years from now, new CEO at Dr. Pepper, whatever the company is, Google, and they say, hey, that was all neat, but things are getting a little skinny around here. This economy took a downturn. Man, this inflation is biting us in the butt. We're not going to fund those things anymore. And the money goes away. Do you see that happening, or do you think this is here for the long haul?
I think there's certainly cycles of, let's call it ESG, that we see when things are more important than others. And I think all it takes is a nice correction in the economy for people to start looking and saying what's truly important. But I also would say water's a finite resource. And we see this in farming right now. I mean, we understand that we are going to have to learn to farm, especially in the Western United States, where we don't have the same level of precipitation. Yeah. We're going to have to learn to farm with the water that we have. We're not going to get any more. It is going to be just the ante to the poker game to be able to water more efficiently. So I think for sure it's going to ebb and flow, but consumers are going to demand that we irrigate and farm efficiently. They're going to demand from corporates as well that they produce and manufacture efficiently, and water's a big part of that.
Yeah, and there's the social part of it, as you're speaking of, and then there's the E part of it, the environmental reality. I lived in San Diego a year after I was out of college. And when you went to the restroom and they had signs telling you to shut the water off while you're brushing your teeth, and I thought, why the hell do they tell me to do this? I'm from Indiana. We don't have any of these issues. So this has been a thing for a long time. So the water battle is going to, I believe, turn economic. It's been mostly political up till now. And so without a program, let's say it does go away. Let's say these companies do say, yeah, we funded that for a long time. We're not doing that anymore. Could you still justify converting flood irrigation on alfalfa fields to subsurface drip irrigation with monitoring, as you said. Can I justify that without the corporate uh,
Yeah.
money?
Absolutely. You just got to have the appetite to put the capital investment in up front. I mean, between the difference, so you can run an irrigation system, a drip irrigation system in alfalfa, and you could have one of two different goals if you want. One goal might be, I'm going to conserve water. The other goal might be, I'm going to push yield. And so now you may actually use more water if you wanted to use more water. You may use this as a irrigation system that delivers fertilizer to push yield. So now go back to the other problem that we know we're all grappling with as agriculturalists, which is feeding this growing population. We can talk about the feed the world story, but everybody knows it. We have less land, we got to produce more food. So I think this can go both ways. And for sure, you can do the economic calculation and the ROI to say, hey, if I can get more yield per cutting of alfalfa,
Yeah.
higher quality of alfalfa,
And do it with less water. Now, is on a water savings right now, because I know what a bushel of soybeans sells for. I know what a ton of top-notch alfalfa sells for. Water has been bastardized through politics for so long. If I say I'm going to do this on water savings alone, even farmers don't know what they're paying for a gallon of water or an acre foot of water. Nobody does, because it has defied a true marketplace, mostly because of the bastardized politics. Am I right?
Yeah, it depends where you're at. I can guarantee you that a farmer in the Western United States where water is scarce knows exactly what they're paying, because they don't have enough water to farm, and they are buying water from other farmers who fallowed land. And
Okay.
how long is it going to take for that to stretch outside of California? I don't know, but yeah, it's a good point.
I think it's probably, well, everywhere from where the Ogallala Aquifer is the source, west, which is about 7 plains states, as we were, what we used to call them in grade school, the mountain states, Arizona, where I live part of the time, Colorado, probably Utah, where little agriculture is in Nevada, and then certainly California. But all right, can you talk about numbers? The person that is listening to this, and no, you don't need to give away and divulge this particular farm's checkbook, but the person listening to this is like, hey, that's cool, but you know what? How much? Now, you said a significant amount. Did the grant through the corporate partnership program that you've launched, did the grant cover more than 50% of the cost of install?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be relative to the specific project for sure. So, but certainly north of 50%. I think the other thing that's important as well is you can stack this funding with other funding. So if you were to get a corporation where we could work with you to provide some funding from the corporate, it doesn't mean that you couldn't access these other programs that we talked about, like Equip or Sweep. So those are opportunities. We also offer financing for our irrigation systems back through our dealer partners or directly with Netafim as well. So that's not free money, of course, but if there's an opportunity where somebody's looking to defer capital costs, there's lots of ways to work through this.
This is a big enough opportunity, I think. Of course, there's only so many companies that are going to do this. Some companies are going to say, go pound sand. We don't care. You know what? We're in the business of making widgets. We're going to make widgets, and we're going to figure out how to market and sell and distribute widgets. And, you know, you can take your ESG somewhere else. But there's other places where does Netafim North America, meaning do you have somebody that reports to you that every day just pounds the pavement on trying to find companies that would participate in this partnership between you and farmland owners?
We do. And I think that's pretty unique to Netafim. We have a whole team that's dedicated to not just the corporate side of this, but also the government side of this.
Okay.
And so on the corporate side, we have a person that this is literally all they do. They are working with corporations, and they have a skill set that's been developed over 20 years in this space. This is what they do. The other part of that program as well, like I mentioned, is we have individuals that are focused specifically with state and federal politicians on two fronts. One front is, how do we help farmers get the most out of the money that is already in these programs? The other part of that, of course, is long-term, and it's being on the front end so that as legislation is being developed, we are helping farmers, where we're helping the legislators understand what the farmers need. A great example, again, Western United States oriented, but One of the worst things that, in my opinion, that I see is when the government pays farmers not to farm.
Yeah.
And we see this fallow land,
Yeah.
and we can save all the water off the Colorado. What if we use the same money and we dedicated that money towards putting more efficient irrigation systems in with farmers, allowing them to farm? You achieve the same result and farmers still farm.
Yeah. Well, I go dove hunting around dairy farms outside of Phoenix, and I still see inefficient utilization of the water resource. And again, knowing that, I also watch the morning news in Phoenix, and it's telling us that they're going to not allow golf courses to water because and I'm like, well, wait a damn minute, 70 miles, 50 miles outside of town, water's literally blowing down a dirt path here because they're not incentivized to be that efficient with it. So you can see where I know a lot of my, agricultural listeners are like, well, screw those people in the suburbs. Well, those people in the suburbs all vote. And
Sure.
those people in the suburbs also pay taxes and drive the economy with their jobs or their businesses. So the idea that you think you're going to win the battle over water utilization, the suburban people want their water also, right? And so I think that's where it's going to drive some of this. You said that they're going to demand it from an environmental thing. Most people aren't sign-carrying environmentalists, but they are users of water. And when they're going to say, wait a minute, my wife and I, make a couple $100,000, we raise our kids, we pay our taxes, and son of a bitch, I can't go golfing over here because the golf course got cut off on water out there in Gila Bend, Arizona. There's water blowing all over the place to grow alfalfa for cows. So, I mean, there's some real battle here that ultimately I hope that your concept remedies.
For sure. I think one of the other things too that is an interesting dynamic in all of this when you start bringing the political landscape into this. I'm gonna share something with you that you might be shocked to, but oftentimes we don't always trust what the government tells us. And so a challenge that we have sometimes is there's a use it or lose it mentality. And we will run into people to say, I don't know that I want to always adopt more efficient irrigation because if I was using 4 acre feet of water and now I'm using 2, I may never get that 2 acre feet back.
Yeah, from an allocation, it's the old thing, just like government. I've got to blow my entire budget so that I can ask for 4% more next year, even though I don't have anything to blow it on. I'm going to make up stuff to blow it on. Yeah, so it's an allocation issue, which a lot of people where I'm from don't even comprehend. It's like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, you're allocated certain acre feet, acre inches of water or whatever. But yeah, by the way, an acre foot is about 326,000 gallons, I think. You're nodding your head. People listening, driving their car can't hear you nod your head, Mike.
I think it's 326. Calculation off the top of my head.
I think it's 326,000 gallons because it's a staggering amount of water. That obviously, 1 foot of water over 1 acre, I think, is 326. Okay, 326,000, I should say. Okay, answer me then about where you see this going. Meaning, these kinds of programs. Other companies could do this. Many agricultural companies are forced to talk about sustainability or talk about how they're helping reduce nutrients, natural resource utilization, all that. And we're using less natural resources per calorie of food produced than we ever have in the history of humanity. Good for us. It seems to me this is something that could expand.
Yeah.
More companies could be doing this.
Agree. I think one of the challenges that is happening today in the current agronomic environment is we're coming off of a couple of back-to-back years and now looking like a third year where we've got a reduction in net farm income. And when that happens and farmers are tightening their belts and now they're paying more for their operating loans and having to service that debt as well, it trickles down. So times are tight right now in the industry, but we operate in a cyclical industry. And the reason I bring that up is to pull this off and to do these things requires an investment. And to your point earlier, which I appreciate you asking, I don't think there are a lot of companies that have people dedicated to doing nothing but this. We believe that this is the future. We believe that this is going to be important for increased adoption of drip irrigation. So we're investing today in a tight time to fund the future.
I've worked clients of mine have been irrigation companies, and there's nothing wrong with center pivot irrigation. There's nothing wrong with flood irrigation. I have worked for these Zimmatic and Valley, and these companies have been clients of mine. But it seems to me, in areas that water is a battleground, it's got to be. I mean, it's on death's door. Irrigation that is inefficient, and I'm not saying that these companies do anything wrong, but when you lose about a third of it to evaporation is what I've read, and I've never been an irrigated farm owner. So my understanding is that you lose about a third of it to evaporation. You're doing the work, you're pumping it. Like I said, you're using it and you're losing it. It seems to me that in places where water's a battleground, drip, your style, like your company does, is the absolute future.
Yeah, it's the efficiency part of it. So you can look at it from a regulatory standpoint and say finite resource, right? And is it going to get regulated? Will it, or is it? But you can also look at it again from a cropping standpoint. Look at an alfalfa field and look at the front end of the field and look at the tail end of the field. You're going to see a difference in the way that alfalfa is grown. I keep using alfalfa as an example, but it applies to anything. Look at flood irrigated corn on the front end of the field and the back end of the field. Mm-hmm. You use drip irrigation, you have efficient crop stand across the whole field. Obviously, you're going to deal with different types of soil, but you're going to get a yield increase. You're going to get a quality increase in doing that as well. I think the other part too that may be a bit regulatory related, but doesn't always go into the thought process around what else does drip irrigation bring. There's a big push for reduction in CO2 emissions. So you're pumping water. If you don't have to pump as much water, you don't have to run the pump as long. You're using less fertilizer because you're delivering it more efficiently. Yeah. You're reducing the amount of tillage that you have to do because you don't wet the entire field, so you don't have the weed growth. You think about regenerative agriculture and that buzzword, and people talking about improved soil health. Drip reduces soil erosion, reduces compaction, increases soil microbial activity. So there's a whole host of other things that go along with it.
Yeah, I said, from my observation, I think drip is in areas that are watertight, meaning water. And by the way, for you scientists listening to this, Mr. Hemman has said finite resource as he referred to water twice. He doesn't really believe that because we all took science class, precipitation, evaporation, condensation, transpiration. The water is a hydrologic cycle, is perpetual. But in areas that are water deprived, and especially the last several years of very dry years, you can use it faster than you regain it. So it's not finite, but for all intents and purposes, it's almost finite because in those areas, they're getting in precipitation half of what their demand is or something. So that's what his point is. You got to always do that because you know what happens? Sometimes, Mike, we have these little peckerheads that send me emails like, your guest said this, you didn't correct them. Yeah, so I just did. Hey, okay. See, we're having a good time here. We always do on the Business of Agriculture. Business of Agriculture, by the way, if you are a Midwestern farmer, I want you to perk your ears up. Midwest corn, soybean, wheat growers, the evolution of agronomic strategy from Redox Bio-Nutrients is a new way of thinking of getting more with less. That's what we're talking about here, more with less. You can do that through ultra-efficient plant nutrition and superior biostimulants. Redox is a family-owned and operated business in Burley, Idaho. Talk about where they use a lot of irrigation. I went to Burley because I had to go and see Redox. I also had to speak to a bunch of people, and I was there because of an irrigation company. Good folks out there. Anyway, they got 30 years of success. The company started 30 years ago by Darren Moon and specialty crop, moved into turf, and then moved into broadacre. You should really check this out. Using Pathway program, their Pathway program combines flagship products, Mainstay SI, and Banks, that's BANX, with breakthrough nitrogen optimization through their new RDXN technology. If you want to find out more, including detailed information and agronomic contacts, go to redoxgrows.com/Midwest. redoxgrows.com/Midwest. This is not the only thing that you're doing. You also are heading a recycling program. Right. Lots of companies have been trained over the last decade to put the word sustainability everywhere. They got to put it in their advertising, on their website, on social media. They have to say it as often as they can at their shareholder meetings. And a lot of it's just lip service. You are truly doing this to reduce water usage. Obviously, you're doing it to sell subsurface drip irrigation. We get that. You're also doing a recycling program. You've also got niches on indoor ag, and it's all about, yes, to sell some subsurface drip irrigation, but also to put your money where your mouth is about we can help you reduce water consumption. Yes?
Yep. Yeah. So if we dig in a little bit on the recycling issue and the recycling program that we have in place, our biggest market for this is the Salinas Valley, where we're using drip irrigation and lettuce. And yes, farmers want to be sustainable. And yes, farmers are the ultimate environmentalist. But let's be honest about why they're utilizing this program and why recycling is important. They're utilizing this type of irrigation system because it reduces labor. And labor cost, as we all know, is a huge and growing component of the cost of running a farm. So what's happened is in the great state of California, as our rules and regulations and cost have changed around labor, the way that people used to utilize drip irrigation became inefficient because they didn't have the same level of budget to be able to fund the amount of labor that's needed. So they moved to a product that we invented and have moved forward with that is a single-use product. And if you don't know the Salinas Valley, you have a 45, 60-day lettuce crop, so you can sometimes get 3 crops in the course of a year. Now, if you have 3 crops in the course of a year with a single-use product, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you are going to have a lot of end-of-life drip tape that can't be reused. So what we've done is we've invested in building a recycling facility and a recycling program that's a 360-degree closed-loop program. We go to the farmer who utilizes our product. We pick it up off of his farm. We bring it back to our recycling facility. Then we are able to recover the plastic resin that is within that material that we've picked up. We take that to our plant. We remanufacture and introduce a large percentage of that recycled resin back into a product, and we resell it under the name Regen. So the farmer can use this regenerative product, carries the same warranty as any other product, has the same level of efficiency, same level of quality.
So the drip tape, meaning the little irrigation underground hose, goes right back in to make more drip tape irrigation hose, right?
Correct. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So now what we do is we take a waste stream away from the farmer. We give the farmer one less thing to worry about because the people from Costco, the people from Walmart, whatever the produce company are going to ask them all kinds of questions about sustainability because as consumers, we care about this. So now what they can say is, hey, by the way, we are reusing drip irrigation. We are involved in recycling of the drip irrigation. We've just launched a program called Advantage. And we are working with several different large produce companies. You can see them on our website and our social media, where now we are helping them co-brand. What we've done is we've taken an outside certification source that has certified our process. They can put this on their bags, they can put this on their websites, and now they can go back to the Costco's, they can go back to the Walmarts and say, here's one more sustainable thing that we're doing. Now, hopefully, and what the ideal scenario is it's good to feel good about these things that we're doing and they're important. But what we would like is for the farmer to be able to generate a little bit more per acre off of growing in a sustainable way than a less sustainable way.
Your irrigation business in the United States of America, 3/4 of it in California?
No, half? Not at all. The majority is in the Western United States and in California, but it's even less than half.
Okay.
It's very broad reaching.
Okay. With programs like you've got, this corporate partnership program where you can maybe get some corporate money from a company that wants to invest, if assuming that stays around. Do you have money right now, by the way? Are you sitting on $10 million of commitment from the Costco's of the world and trying to find somewhere to bury it in the ground?
We have corporations that are looking for projects, and we're trying to connect farmers with the money. So for sure, there's money that's available now.
Perfect. Where do you see that being deployed? Obviously, it's not going to come to Indiana because there's not pressure on water here, or will it?
It could. It really depends on the corporation. So we have projects in California is where a lot of them are. We have projects in Utah. We have projects that we've talked about doing in Texas. We've had projects we've talked about doing in the Midwest. It really depends upon the who and what they're trying to accomplish at that particular spot. Generally, it's connected to some place where there's some sort of water stress event, whether it's a water stress event that's environmental or whether it's a water stress event that a corporation imposed upon themselves because of the way that they manufacture or run their company.
I see. So you do have corporate partnerships right now looking for projects to fund. Is there a minimum or a maximum?
Nope,
Dollars, size wise,
there's
gallons.
not. Nope, there's not. I mean, it's really an individual. It's a very individual process to connect the right farmer with the right corporate. The best thing to do, we have a farmer hub on our website at netafimusa.com. That farmer hub will give you the information about how to get involved in the corporate partnership program, how to get in touch with somebody on our agronomy team. And by the way, if you're interested on the farmer hub, we also have a lot of information about how to access state funding, government funding, other sources of funding to help offset the cost of an irrigation system beyond just the corporate partnership program.
Technology alone is helping us use less water. First off, subsurface drip uses less than flood quite a bit and puts it where it needs to be down at the roots. But then also the automation of the valves and all that kind of stuff. In general, even if you have somebody that was using subsurface drip 20 years ago to today, I'm guessing they're using considerably less just by getting better at it with the valve switches, monitors, moisture monitors, et cetera. Am I right?
Yeah, yes, but there's a long way to go. I'll give you just a short story. Amazing trip I had just a couple of weeks ago. I was out in the field in Salinas Valley and got done talking to a farmer about irrigation. He said, anything else you want to see? And I said, I want to go see that laser weeder that you guys are using. So we followed behind a laser weeder. This is a guy that's growing organic and he's killing the weeds with lasers. Right. So incredible. Just think about the world that we live in today. We got done with that and we went and looked at another cultivator. And the guy that was setting up the cultivator hopped out of the tractor and pulled an iPad out. And he's using the iPad to program this cultivator. Amazing. Incredible. Before we walked off, I asked the guy, I said, how do you turn on your irrigation valves? Guess what he said? By hand.
Yeah. Right? So he's got a laser weeder so that he can comply with organic, meaning reduction or completely elimination of herbicide. Mm-hmm. And he's got cultivating equipment that can be run remotely from an iPad. Yep. And you said, what about your subs? What about all the irrigation? I go over and turn it on by hand.
Exactly. So there's two pieces to this. One piece is just the control part of it, right? So we can easily automate that. We have technology that automates that, and it's not anything that's new. It's a learning curve. You have to learn to farm differently. You have to learn, and you have to put the investment in to do it as well. But I think the other part of this as well, if you look back at automation, is it's not just the control. You can also now collect information directly from the field site specifically through a weather station, through a soil moisture sensor, whatever it might be, or you could use crowdsourced data from other weather utilities. And then now that information can be fed back into the system and analyzed in the cloud. So now we take that, we analyze it in the cloud, we put it up against a crop model, and we can go back to the farmer and say, you're over irrigating or you're under irrigating. And what generally happens with drip irrigation, especially for people that are using it for the first time, is they over irrigate. Because to your point, if it's under the ground, and they're looking at the surface of the soil, they say it's not wet. So obviously I need to put more irrigation on. Well, the roots aren't on the top of the soil, they're in the soil.
Yeah.
So this is a key thing that is being utilized from an automation standpoint. Now think about the other things you can do as well. If you're pumping water, and if you're in a state with high electricity cost, odds are it costs you more to pump and access the electrical grid at certain times of the day versus other times of the day. So now you can put that same logic, overlay that in the cloud as well, and you run your irrigation system autonomously when power is least expensive and when the crop needs it the most.
Yeah, so from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. or something like this when there's less demand. What about the future? Where are we going? I wonder how long companies will throw $1 million, however many dollars at something like your corporate partnership program. I'm not being mean. I'm not degrading your corporate. I think it's amazing what you're doing. And you've got a staff doing it to get money to make agriculture better as well as sell your product. I get that. But I wonder when it runs out. The consumer loved organic food, and I can look and overlay the thing. In 2008, when we had our financial crisis, organic food consumption declined by like 30% or something. I can't remember the exact number. I'm real close. 8, 9, 10, 11. It coincides exactly. I care about organic food. Oh, wait a minute. Things are really skinny. Corporations hey, we want to throw money at these sustainability programs, but things are really skinny. I've already asked you once about the lifespan, the longevity of it, but what do you see as potential hiccups?
Yeah, so I think the corporate partnership program or even the government funding that I've talked about, state or federal or whatever, that's not, I mean, that's part of a solution to reduce the cost of capital. And why is that needed? It's because when somebody's working the first time with drip irrigation, they don't always understand what the return on investment looks like when you move to a drip irrigation system. Yes, there's a cost up front, but that cost is recovered rather quickly, whether it's based on utilization of less water, if water is expensive, or pumping costs are more expensive, or higher yield and quality. So what I see is in many cases, this is breaking open new markets that we have not historically penetrated in the past. Farmers are going to begin to utilize drip irrigation, see how it works, understand how it works. Some of our best farmers, I'll give an example in Texas. We have farmers that since the late 90s have been using drip irrigation in cotton. The way that they first started using drip irrigation in cotton was obviously the problem with the Ogallala Aquifer. They accessed some equip funding. They were able to use that funding because they didn't want to put the capital out up front. They saw the return on investment, and they've moved the whole farm to drip, even with their own funding, not utilizing the equip funding and funding from federal or state. That's what I believe will happen as people get more experience with drip irrigation.
You believe there'll be some government and there'll be an experimental, and then it'll catch on and sell more because the result.
I do.
But does corporate stay around? 5 years from now, does corporate stay? Does corporate partnership program that Netafim North America began, is it 10 times bigger 5 years from now, or is it 10 times smaller?
I think it's for sure bigger, even if the corporates are putting less focus on it because it's brand new and we're growing this thing. And again, I do believe that just look at our economy and look at what the typical consumer in the grocery store is doing and what they're buying and how they're making decisions.
Yeah.
The consumers are going to demand that all corporates continue to have some view of sustainability. I talked to somebody the other day who works for a large food company, and they went to one of these large off-takers, and 100% of the conference they went to was, how was this volleyball manufactured? Was it manufactured in a sustainable fashion?
Yeah.
We don't have to stretch very far in agriculture to show that we're sustainable. So yes, I think it's going to continue.
I actually agree with you. I was playing the devil's advocate. I agree with you because of those things and the demographics. We're going to have fewer, and I know you talked about, feed the world and all that, but the truth is our birth rates are declining, but we are finding that we have a more societally, whether it's just on their phone or whatever, consumer than we've ever had. So we're going to have this consumer that they may never go to a lettuce farm. Mm-hmm. But by God, they want that story and that corporate buy-in that aligns with their values. And that's a big thing. So I agree with you. So, yeah, I think that you also said maybe it'll be fewer dollars per entity, but more entities that are in this because their consumers demand it. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. And they're gonna invest the money somewhere, whether it's in agriculture or whether it's in some other component. So again, if the overall amount of dollars goes down over time, but we're funneling more of it into agriculture, it's good for us.
And we haven't before. All right. What did I not ask you that I should have asked you in general? I know you came here prepared. You're one of the more prepared guests I've had. I like that about you, Mike. When it comes to where this all goes, what did I not ask you that you want to tell me?
Yeah, I don't know that you haven't asked me anything. I think one thing that I've been beating the drum on here recently, every time I've had an opportunity that most of your listenership, I'm sure, already understands because they're in the business of agriculture, is I've been paraphrasing a quote from John F. Kennedy, that the farmer is the only person in our economy who buys at a retail price, sells at a wholesale price, and pays the freight both ways. Yeah. So for us, and the largest part of what we do in Netafim every single day and what we think about is how can we help the farmer grow more profitably? And sometimes it's simply providing better technology, which is what drives our business as a manufacturing company. Other times it's connecting them with financial resources. And oftentimes we have a full agronomy team that's in the field talking to farmers, and it may have nothing to do with delivering water in a more efficient way. It may have to do with how can we automate a process that's very labor intensive right now and help the farmer to solve that overall challenge that he has around cost. And I think more than ever, this is an area that we need to continue to focus on. I do believe, because I've seen it in my career, that the agricultural markets are cyclical and we'll get out of the tight spot that many are in right now. But we have to continue to stay focused on how do we help the farmer grow and how do we help the farmer operate more effectively and profitably.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with everything you said there. Most everything. And 2024, how many dollars from the corporate partnership program can you tell me were deployed or you plan on deploying between now and the end of the year?
I don't know that I have that off the top of my head. I'll say it's significant. I mean, it's not thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's millions of dollars.
Okay. And it's millions of dollars. And you don't, I mean, you sell the product, you get the install and the sell, but you don't get the money. It goes from the entity, the corporate entity, to the farmer that's doing the install.
Correct. And not all the money goes into our pocket either, because we don't supply everything out there. So this
you supply the pipe and the controls, but you don't.
And our dealer network benefits from this as well, because we don't do the installation. So our dealers are going to get the benefit of doing the installation for the farmer. We're going to sell the products that Netafim sells. The other companies that sell products that we don't manufacture are going to get that. So typically on these projects, it's about a third, a third, and a third. A third of it is projects that probably we supply or products that we supply. A third of the cost of one of these is probably labor. And a third of the cost is probably things that we don't supply.
Yeah. So NutriDrip, like our friend Kurt Graham out there, he's a third, you're a third, and then a third of it's stuff that you don't even touch. Yep. All right. Please remember my sponsors. Redox, go to redoxgrows.com. And if you're a Midwestern, go to redoxgrows.com/Midwest. They want to make sure that they're getting some listenership and viewership and action from the Midwest. Also, Truterra. Again, I can't talk about enough that, we're in skinny margins. Every dollar that you can earn, diversification of revenue is going to be the key to farming entities that stay alive. Some of us that have been around for a few years remember what things were like in the old days. So I think you really need to look at revenue sources and diversification of revenue. If you like this, please share it with somebody. I'm really trying to grow my YouTube presence. So go over there and hit subscribe on the Damian Mason YouTube channel. It doesn't cost anything. Just hit subscribe. Go to YouTube, put in Damian Mason, hit subscribe, share this with somebody. And also, I'd like it if you could do, some favorable reviews, if you will, because after all, I want to make sure that in my 8th year now of producing the business of agriculture, that we still have a lot of new people that don't know about this, and I want to make sure they find it. They'll find that if you give me some reviews and some shares. Mike Hemman, if anybody wants to learn about the corporate partnership, go to what website?
Netafimusa.com.
Netafim. Net.
Yes. Netafim USA.com.
Got it. His name is Mike Hemman. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Next time, I appreciate you listening and sharing this so much. And again, it was a great episode. Appreciate you being here. Till next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of The Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Pattern.ag. You've heard me talk about Pattern.ag because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? Pattern Ag will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.